Do you need a web application security solution that can improve your detection rate and enable easier remediation? Acunetics has a fully automated solution that can detect and report over 4,500 web vulnerabilities. Fast and scalable, it can scan thousands of pages without interruption, including HTML5, JavaScript, and single-page applications. Acunetics provides accuracy with the lowest false positives by combining black box and white box testing. For more information, visit acunetics.com/Security Weekly.
Welcome back, everyone, for Application Security News for the week of March 24th, 2019. Before we get started, a couple of quick announcements. First, John Strand will be teaching Active Defense and Cyber Deception at Black Hat 2019. You can register now at the link on the wiki. So go to wiki.securityweekly.com, click on Application Security Weekly, and then go to episode 55. Also, we just released our 2019 Security Weekly 25 Index. Please go to securityweekly.com and click the survey link to help us understand who's evaluating, using, or formerly used any of the Security Weekly 25 companies. The results will be summarized and presented back to all respondents in a private webcast. Also, I would like to just welcome my special guest for this segment, my cat, who is going to be going away for a little while.
Keith, have you seen the Captain Marvel movie? The new
Yes, with Goose. Yep.
Yes. I don't want to say the cat was integral to the plot, but definitely played a major role.
Well, when Mike brought up the cats on the last segment,
right.
Keith pulled the cat on, but I don't think the cat got on the video until just now. And
I know.
Now it wants to
say hello and have her
15 minutes of fame.
Yes.
Yeah. So Facebook, as we were talking about previously, nightmare, hundreds of millions of passwords in plain text. Matt, Paul?
Yeah. What concerned me more about this article, Keith, was, well, it's concerning that the passwords were being stored accidentally in plain text. And it looked to be to some specific type of Facebook accounts, and I can't recall the detail. However, they also said that they had logs, speaking of knowing where your data is stored and who has access to it, that there was like thousands of people that had access to it, and even proved that people had accessed that. But I don't know how much truth there is to that. Is that programmatically? Is that like I'm at my desk and I'm Paul and I access someone's Facebook password via this method? I'm not sure.
It's probably audit logs, right? So it's probably a situation of they've got some sort of Splunk thing that says, hey, we had the following user last updated or last used following file, right? So yeah, it was 2,000 engineers or developers had made approximately 9 million internal queries for data elements that contained plain text user passwords. So yeah, not great. And interestingly as well, to your point, Paul, for the services that were impacted by this, it was, let's see here, they had a list of them in the article. I'm just trying to quickly scan through this. Oh, okay, here we are. Facebook Lite users, Facebook users, and Instagram users. Interestingly, I didn't know about Facebook Lite, but it's an application used in low-speed connection or low-spec phones from probably areas around the world that don't have access to kind of, the leading Pixel 2 or iPhone variants that are out there. So yeah, hundreds of millions of Facebook Lite users specifically, and tens of millions of Facebook users, and then only tens of thousands of Instagram users. So, I mean, it could be worse, maybe, because I imagine the people using Facebook Lite are probably not super wealthy individuals that, are targets of attack, maybe?
Does that also prove that Instagram's not nearly as popular as Facebook because it was only tens of thousands?
So given that, the Instagram numbers it's interesting, right? Because it's only tens of thousands of Instagram users. How many Instagram users do they really have? Like, conspiracy theory? I don't know.
Yeah, because why would it only be tens of thousands if they had more users? Why only tens of thousands, or was tens of thousands everything anyways?
Right. So who knows?
Still bad. I mean, back to the previous conversation, right? Encrypting passwords is a good thing to do. And if you're using, we talked a little bit about, people are using Facebook for authentication. I guess it's the token that's probably the more interesting part of this. But still, I mean, having these passwords potentially exposed, just not a good idea.
Well, yeah, there was the issue with Facebook tokens. Gosh, I wanted to say it was earlier this year that we covered it. It might have been toward the end of last year, where a bunch of tokens were getting leaked or were being stolen and had to all be reset by Facebook. So that was a nightmare into itself, right? So it's if they can't get your password, they'll get the token that allows them access to your applications that you have, gone ahead and used the authentication mechanism for. So yeah, either way, post data, make sure that you're cleaning that up before you go ahead and throw it in a log, maybe. Um, so then again, it's funny. I always come back to the reason that information security exists today in the capacity that it does is because of the decreasing cost of disk space. Because otherwise, I remember back in the 90s playing on Battle.net, Blizzard's
Mm-hmm.
online system. They didn't log almost anything. Like you could get away with a lot of really bad stuff on there. Um, so yeah, I mean, here we are today. They log everything, including your password. Congratulations.
Do we know whether these passwords were outside of the Facebook people that could see them? Did some of this data get out or not? Is it sitting in a dark web site for sale somewhere now, or do
So
we not know?
in this case, it looks like it was actually an interview with an internal employee at Facebook who basically tipped off Krebs on security, or Brian Krebs,
Yep.
for this article. So it looks like it was actually found by some of the folks on the security team that were looking to remediate this internally. And the person that spoke with Brian Krebs, did so anonymously for this story. So. Either way, Facebook eventually did come back with software security engineer Scott Renfro stating that the company planned to alert Facebook users that were affected, but that no password resets would be required, which I find rather suspicious.
Hmm.
Like, that's the one thing in there that I'm like, why wouldn't you require a password reset given the situation? And that maybe says that the magnitude is just too big, that they couldn't handle it. What do you guys think?
Did they notify the users?
They will be notifying them, or
Will
they
be.
plan to anyway, but they have no required password reset, which in my mind seems like a really bad idea. Now, I imagine that they're not forcing the password reset because of the fact that it would impact kind of the user experience and/or that they would have issue handling that much kind of changing over or encrypting of that many passwords under a short period of time. Because if you think about it, right? So take a step back and think about your Facebook. You've got several hundred million passwords that need to be reset. Now, in the past, maybe they weren't all getting encrypted, but now you're using bcrypt, right? Which is not necessarily a heavy algorithm for every single instance, but at hundreds of millions of instances of that running. And this is probably all up in a cloud infrastructure where it automatically scales and it's got pretty high compute and pretty high RAM. Can you imagine how costly it is for Facebook to actually reset and have people reestablish over several hundred million passwords,
Hmm.
right? From just a compute power standpoint alone.
Right.
Could you guys imagine what that the Amazon bill for that looks like?
Yeah, it would be a nice little chunk. But my wife did not get a LifeLock alert for Facebook, so maybe it's not out anywhere because LifeLock hasn't found it yet. She got another one, but it wasn't Facebook related. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that Experian is telling anybody with their deep dark web search at this point, so I imagine that we're probably okay for now. Maybe
maybe
I don't know. If you're a Facebook user, my suggestion: go change your
change your
password. Like,
password. Yes.
just do it.
Yeah.
It's not going to take much of your time, and maybe you're using a password manager that will be like, hey, by the way, you should change this password, and it's really easy. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Paul, Matt, do you guys have anything else to say on this before we jump to the next story?
No, it's just been a bad year for Facebook.
Mm.
It's only March. With that being said, though, WordPress continuing to have a bad day or a bad year
Bad year
or
too.
bad existence in general.
Yeah.
So a 0-day and a WordPress single or simple mail transfer protocol or SMTP plugin abused by two hacker groups. This was actually a really interesting story to read through because it reads that the hacker groups themselves are acting in almost the exact same way based off of the POC that was published. So I don't know. This was kind of like 300,000 active installs, a way to get admin access on the box. Not great. or at least admin access to WordPress, I should say, which would allow the subscriber role to be given the admin level access by modifying the WP_user_roles. Clever, but also yikes. I mean, I don't even know what to say to this. Paul, Matt, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of. I covered one when I sat in for you guys a few weeks back. I mean, we're just seeing these plugins that have these really nasty vulnerabilities that a lot of people are using. WordPress is one of the most. I think it's probably the biggest, content management system behind all these websites, and all these plugins have these vulnerabilities, which opens up all kinds of potential issues to the website. So that's another string of these. I think you've got another one in here that's WordPress related too, I think.
Yeah, XSS vulnerability in WordPress as well.
Right.
So yeah, it all comes back to that plugin environment, and it's one of those situations where again, you build the application in such a way that almost anyone can write a plugin and enter it and add it pretty quickly and seamlessly to the kind of quote unquote store that they have or market. But at the same time, it's like you got to put your foot down somewhere, and I just don't know that WordPress is interested in doing that, given everything we've seen to date.
Yeah, I would like to see a better review process of the plugins that come into the store that people use. So at least they've gone through some level of validation and maybe security checking or something, just so these types of vulnerabilities don't impact all these people's WordPress's websites, because there's so many of them that people just grab them and pop them in. We use a number of them for the Security Weekly website too.
Yeah, and it's heavy scrutiny that goes under whether or not we're going to add it. And sometimes we'll get suggestions, and I'm like, no, we can't add that, just based on like it doesn't have enough reviews, it doesn't have enough installations, and I looked at the code and it's terrible, or whatever the case may be. So, but not everyone does that level of scrutiny, and I think WordPress really wants there to be lots of plugins available for a lot of functionality, because that's why people choose WordPress. So it's an interesting situation that WordPress is in. However, every week there's more plugins. I mean, this research has been going on for years. I remember being at, I think Allison presented at ShmooCon or one of the bigger conferences, or one of her coworkers, someone she knew, had presented and analyzed a bunch of the code and was like, it's terrible now, and it doesn't get any better. We keep covering plugins that get adopted and have vulnerabilities.
Yeah, I mean, you scrutinize Apple how you want. I mean, they've done a pretty good job from a review process before something comes up on the App Store. I'd like to see similar, at least some level of due diligence from WordPress before they just make them available.
My suggestion is giving folks that run WordPress more control over what their plugins can do. Like, give me some type of plugin sandbox capability so that me as the user, I can tell that plugin what it can and can't do, right? And I don't know if that's applicable to WordPress. If it were that easy, they probably would have implemented it already. Maybe. But it seems to me like once that plugin starts running PHP code, it all runs within the context of your entire website. I've not seen that functionality in WordPress. It could exist in I don't know, maybe there's a plugin for WordPress that allows you to do that for plugins. I'm not sure. I mean, it'd be kind of weird to have a plugin, load other plugins. There's performance, obviously, considerations, but I don't know. Keith, Matt, what do you think of that style approach?
I mean, containerizing your plugin environment sounds like what WordPress needs is a better API.
Yep.
I don't know, because if you did that, that could work potentially, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, that would be the beauty of, if it were containerized, at least you could isolate it to a specific function and therefore minimize how much overlap it has to the rest of the WordPress.
At the end of the day, I would say when it comes to this, if WordPress were AWS, what they would do is they'd go out and look at the best plugins on the market. They would build them themselves and charge people to use them on, say, I don't know, monthly or annual basis, and just corner people out of the market and wholly own those really popular plugins, because at the end of the day, they'd make money off of it and it would probably be more secure.
Mm-hmm.
True. But some people don't like everything being with one
right
vendor too. Awesome.
Fair, also fair. I mean, then again, if you're all in on AWS, you're all in on AWS usually. I mean, not always, but
Usually.
same sort of thing.
True.
So
Yeah.
there's that. So I don't know. I got a couple other stories in here, guys. If you want to jump around to some, I know that there's, of course, the one on Kubernetes, which I thought was pretty good, and then there's a couple of the ones down at the bottom that I thought were good as well. We mentioned the other one for WordPress. I guess we could stick with that for a moment. Is story number 3 under "If you build it, they will come," which is how there is XSS vulnerabilities in an abandoned cart plugin that leads to a WordPress site takeover. Did you guys read this?
No, I didn't get through the whole thing.
Okay, so this one's interesting because the idea is that you have a cart, and I'm sure you guys have probably done this too, right? You go out to, say, Amazon, for example, you fill in the cart a little bit, and then you get pulled away, whether it's family, whether it's, suddenly you're eating dinner or something, you forgot about it. Well, what this is intended to do is it's the WooCommerce Abandoned Cart Pro or Abandoned Cart Free app that allows people to go in and effectively look at the abandoned cart information to try and determine, missed sales opportunities, more or less.
Oh, I see.
And to follow through on it. And the teardown in this article is actually really good because it looks at some of the code, and it actually looks at the functions used to handle AJAX requests, which fails to perform any sort of input validation on post, like the $_post fields. So it's both a great article in terms of the teardown itself, but also it talks about like how malicious JavaScript would hijack admin sessions. And then at this point, they would actually insert 2 separate types of backdoors into the system, one at the visionstat.js backdoor. And then, of course, they would also look at things related to kind of, other attack vectors that they could get backdoors into the system with, including the billing_first name and billing_last name, where they would drop the payloads into this because it on the admin panel, it shows up as like first name, last name, abandoned date. And so you can put in all the script tags where you want, concatenates those together nicely, call it a day. So yeah, this was a pretty cool article to read through. And at the end of the day, they also put a backdoor in the Woo user email address field for Mailinator, which is like, yikes, on both accounts. For the actual kind of, end result here is the providers of this did go in and provide a patched version, which is also commented on in the article as being rather clever in the way that they deal with some of the problems, including removing the less than or the angle caret symbol so that they can't have any sort of script injection. But my advice is if you run this plugin in your WordPress, first of all, go update, and then secondly, go do an audit of all of your abandoned users after you've run that, just to make sure, because they actually do go back in and remove some of those malicious characters as part of the update as well if they were ever entered.
Oh, got it.
So check your systems. The only advice I have.
Right. Yeah, because there's got to be a lot of abandoned carts out there. Sometimes you can't even see the price until you put it in the cart.
Correct.
For certain sites. And so you drop it in there just to see what the price has gone. Never mind. Now you have an abandoned cart that now is vulnerable.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, that one was not great. I also did want to talk about, I think it is, let's see here. I'm just going to go back to the notes. So this is story number 2 under "If you build it, they will come," which is a severe security bug found in popular PHP library for creating PDF files from ZDNet, with Catalin Kempenu being the author of this article. This one's another good one, just because of the fact that you've got this popular TCPDF, which is one of the big 3 PHP libraries out there, with MPDF and FPDF that are used for converting code into PDF documents or assembling PDF files on the fly. Yeah, I mean, I could totally see how this would be vulnerable to remote code execution if it's taking websites and then dumping them into PDF format. So first of all, have you guys ever seen anything like this? I mean, this is effectively a serialization attack that leads to code execution. But
yeah, I was going to say this has to be a serialization bug.
Yeah, and it's clever though, right? Because if you think about it, right, when PHP is converting these files, there are certain things that are happening, and it's the conversion and then the insertion into the files themselves that is reading back certain characters and then dumping them in. And what was interesting about this article was there was actually an article posted last year by Sakarma researcher Sam Thomas, who gave a showcase on this new deserialization bug affecting PHP apps last summer. And as it turns out, this new attack vector is based off of that exact work, which was looking into this deserialization exploit and proving it out in languages, of course, beyond PHP for deserialization exploits, including Ruby, Java, and .NET that are likely or not likely exposed to this vulnerability, but are likewise impacted by such bugs or bug classes. This was a cool one. I don't know. Did you guys get a chance to look through any of this? Because it looks like they did a patch, but then reintroduced a vulnerability and then had to repatch again.
Yeah, they fixed it and then they had to fix it again, like in August and September of last year. But we know PHP by itself is super vulnerable. So anything that's leveraging the base PHP library has all kinds of potential vulnerabilities that would impact any of these other libraries, since PHP itself is so vulnerable as well. It's crazy. I'm sure there's some other variant that will be announced in the next few weeks.
Yeah, we'll see it at a conference this summer or next year or something. As we were talking right between the segments, one of the things that I like to call PHP is it's a relic of the copper age, which is the internet back when everyone was using dial-up. And as a relic of the copper age, it is, fragile. It's frail. So yeah, I'm not going to be surprised if we see more on this. Deserialization bugs are probably going to be the next great adventure for a lot of people once they've got kind of those easier vectors taken out from under them as developers start to use new languages like React, or frameworks like React, I should say. And XSS goes away. It'll just be, okay, what's another way in? Deserialization or other vectors accordingly. So do you guys want to cover a couple of learning and tools real quick? We got a few of those in here.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
So one of the ones I really liked, this is an article written by Ryan Ohoro, and he's a lead engineer for a red team, and it's how do you prepare to become a member of a red team, which I thought was actually really good because he breaks down a couple of different things relating to role and what sort of skills you should work on. I really liked some of the charts that he had related to kind of the shades of red teaming and different people that are involved in the process. Being the manager of DevSecOps, the red team actually reports to me inside of Thermo Fisher, so this is near and dear to my heart. But the way that he effectively breaks it down is you've got engineering on one side of the structure and operations on the other side of the structure. And there's pieces to that in between that are directly related to security, such as development, infrastructure, and vulnerability research for engineering, or penetration testing, training and debriefing, and social engineering for operations. And as I like to say, it's basically you have three factors to think of. You build it, you break it, or you fix it, is the way that it ultimately comes down to.
I thought it was.
So I really like this article.
I thought it was build it, ship it, and run it.
That works too. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at the development side of things anyway, right. Absolutely. So yeah, for us, it's build it, break it, fix it. Or at least that's the way that I like to think of it. Those are the qualities that I look for. And the article goes through quite a lot of the highlights in terms of the different skills on a red team. You don't have to be a hacker to be on a red team if you can simply build tools that the red team can use, right? So there's an opportunity for those folks to learn. The nice thing in this article as well is it goes through the ideas of being on an external consulting red team, so a traditional penetration test style red team, versus an internal corporate red team, which, to the point that is being made in this article, you do get a much deeper view of the business, depending on, again, how big that business is and how big your team is. You tend to find out some really scary things that you're like, wait a minute, why does it work that way? And who designed this? And how old is that thing? So I thought that this was a pretty good article, and kind of punny too, especially at the end with this heading, "Can you wrap this up already?" So I thought this was good.
It's a long article. Yes, it's super long.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
The other one as well I wanted to point out is the Azure Services Reference Map. So this is under Learning and Tools number 2. It is a GitHub gist, so you can go out and then it actually has clickable links out to all of the different services that are listed under Azure. If you're ever looking on, either making a conversion or trying to figure out what you should go play with, I don't know that something similar exists for Amazon. I mean, it must is kind of my gut feeling,
But
but this
not
is a
as
really
not
nice
as
thing.
easy to find, I don't think. I mean, this is a really good Amazon. It's harder to find all these different services on their website because you got to go to all these different. It's just a menu of and submenus of menus. Here, it's all laid out for you. It's like, oh yeah, I want to, all the tools are laid out. They're categorized across the top by columns. It's really easy to see what you can leverage directly from Azure. A lot easier than finding this on AWS.
I haven't looked to see if the same person did one for AWS, but if they have, it's going to very quickly become a valuable tool for folks. But yeah, this one, I liked it a lot, especially I was looking at some of the DevOps stuff and I was like, cool. Like I knew that they've got Azure DevOps, but I didn't know the difference between like Azure DevOps versus Azure DevOps projects, or what Azure Lab Services or developer tool integrations existed. And I was like, cool, I can just like
Yeah.
jump into this and go with it. So I thought that was awesome. Although there is some overlap, I should mention. So like if you look at DevOps and you look at developer tools, you'll see Azure DevOps is listed inside of each. So just bear that in mind that there maybe aren't that many services per se, because you may have overlap between the different columns. But it at least gives you an idea of if you're looking for a specific tool in a specific area that you're commonly thinking about, say DevOps, you can quickly jump in and say, okay, yeah, this is the different DevOps services that they have. I can, start to use this, etc. Yeah, so I loved this. Paul, I don't know if you had any comments. I don't know if you've done as much with Azure as maybe Matt or I have. So
I have not. I was interested in the story about deleting your Facebook app, and after a year, what changed and what didn't.
Oh, I love this article. Yeah, this
My
was good.
experiences are pretty similar so far. I mean, I'm not a year in. I'm probably a month maybe in, and my life is better, I feel like, since I've gotten rid of Facebook. Matt doesn't have a Facebook account.
I've never had one, so I have no baseline to compare to.
Well, they did say what's interesting in the article, and I encourage people to read it, is what happened in terms of advertising. What ads you see now versus when you had Facebook. And what I thought was super interesting was he talks about a purchasing experience and says, there was a clothing retailer that, I saw one ad and I was like, oh, that's really cool. Checked it out. I added it to his cart, to Matt and Keith's point, right? And then abandoned. Said, no, I don't really need that. But then over the next few weeks, he just kept seeing the ad for the coat on Facebook, and eventually he bought it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting.
Google does the same thing.
Yep.
You go to a website and you search on something, you find a store, next thing you know, all the ads scrolling by are, hey, you sure you don't want one of those?
Yep.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, and the funny thing is he actually talks about the spending. So this basically from October to mid-March, they spent about $341 on clothing and about $1,100 on Amazon purchases. But if you look at the same time frame from 2017 to 2018, it was nearly 3x spending on clothing up to $1,008. So not quite 3x, but almost there, or actually a little bit more. Excuse me. And then in terms of Amazon spending up to $1,542. So direct result of advertising was that they became just too costly to track for a lot of these advertisers. And at the end of the day, it ended up saving them money, right out of their wallet. So I liked that. The other thing that I thought was telling, and this was my experience back in 2013 when I got rid of it, was your friends that you make plans with will continue to be your friends that you make plans with. In fact, 2013 was after I had been out of college, but still kind of getting my footing in the business world, as it were. And yeah, same thing. I was like, still hang out with the same friends today. And then family was like, oh, we'll never see you. Still see them at the holidays. Like things don't really change all that much.
Yeah, I mean that's the main reason my wife has it, is she stays up to date on all the family stuff because most of them are back in Ohio. We're in Colorado, so we don't see them every day, or maybe once a year when we go back. But that's why she uses it. But yeah, I mean, her friends are her friends. She's going to continue to talk to them on a regular basis. It's more keeping up with the family gossip, I think, more than anything else. And it's my family. It's not even hers.
So one thing I will mention as well is a separate article also highlighted from the New York Times, which is how human contact is now a luxury good. I'm not going to go into it because it's a long article and there's a lot there to digest. I will say it's a little bit saddening when you read it and you just kind of think about the state of the world as it exists. But also at the same time, it's very telling about kind of the future state of humanity in general, I think. So definitely a worthwhile article to read, especially if you're into tech. That's going to be one that it will make you think a little bit more about life, technology, and the universe, all that goodness. Before we go, of course, did you guys get a chance to check out the overexcited cartoon from Commit Strip this week?
I did. It was awesome. There's so many different
one for RSA.
Yeah, I mean, you could like search and replace and really make that relate to any conference.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any conference, any vendor.
Yep.
Insert here.
Right. I loved it. I thought it was great. So with that, I just want to say thank you to Paul and Matt, of course, for having me on to host the show. And of course, to the listeners for listening these last 56 episodes of Application Security Weekly. It has been both an honor to share this time with you. And of course, you can stay in touch with me if you'd like on Twitter @AndMyHacks, as I will be announcing a blog in the coming weeks to continue these conversations, albeit a little less frequently. Until our paths cross again, this is Keith Hoodlet signing off for to Git Commit, stay classy.